So welcome to this sponsor panel with Meta that is entitled to Pathways into AI. So here in this panel, we have professionals in the artificial intelligence sector, of course, at Meta. And here what we want is to learn about the diverse pathways Meta researchers have taken from education into industry, you know. So these professionals will share from personal experience how they arrived in their current role along with their experience on how to expand the field to enable a more representative community of researchers within industry. So first of all, we have Kieran Fuentes. Kieran Fuentes is AI resident at FAIR Labs. So he's an AR resident on the responsible AI team, working on the evaluation of fairness metrics for language models. And prior to Meta, she was a software engineer at Microsoft. She is originally from Mexico. And also we have Maria Lomeli as a research engineer at FAIR Labs. And she is a research engineer at FAIR Labs. And prior to Meta, she was a research scientist at Babylon Health working in machine learning for healthcare. She completed a PhD in machine learning at the Gatsby Computational Neuroscience Unit, University College London, UCL, and a postdoc at the Machine Learning Group at the University of Cambridge. She is also originally from Mexico. And finally, we have Ricardo Monti, a research scientist, CTRL Research. Ricardo is a research scientist within the CTRL team at Meta Reality Labs. And prior to Meta, he completed his PhD within the statistics department of the Imperial College London and a postdoc with EAPO, having as the Gatsby Computational Neuroscience Unit, UCL. And he's originally from Argentina. So very welcome. Then we have here some questions. So guys, can you describe your path from being a student to where you are right now, please? I don't know, maybe we can start with Kieran. Kieran, please.
Yeah, I graduated in 2019 and I studied computer science. I had like very limited research experience when I was in college. So right after college, I joined Microsoft as a software engineer. And I worked there for a little less than 2 years, but I was always interested in research. Yeah, so when I learned about the Meta AI residency, I decided to apply and I got in, and I've been working at Meta for about a year, and I'm planning on applying to PhD programs this fall.
Thank you. Maria, could you please also describe us how was your path from being a student to where you are right now?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for the invitation. So essentially I studied my undergraduate and my master's degree in Mexico, and I started studying actuarial science, which is applied maths, and we have a lot of insurance and statistics and finance. Then I did a master's in maths, and then that's where I started to understand a little bit more about statistical models, and that's how I kind of bumped into machine learning. So then I moved to the UK, and then I started my PhD here, and both my PhD and postdocs were in machine learning. And essentially those years helped me figure out how to use machine learning in research. And after that, I decided to move to industry. And then first I was working for a startup, and then I've been working at Meta for 2.5 years. I just recently joined FAIR Labs, so I kind of went back to doing research, but more in an industrial setup. And yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
Nice. Thank you, Maria. Ricardo, what about you?
Yeah, hi. Thanks also for the invitation. Very excited to be here. So I similar to Maria, I did an undergraduate degree in maths. At the time, I picked maths because I didn't want to do engineering because I didn't like experiments. And then, yeah, throughout my undergraduate degree, I had some interactions, but not so many. But in my third year, in order to make some extra money, I started working at a sort of sports arbitrage hedge fund. They would like make bets on sporting events. I was just there to like monitor the automatic betting system, make sure it didn't break, and if it did, I would call someone that knew how to fix it. But everyone that worked there had like PhDs in stats or machine learning, and I remember thinking that was the best job ever. And so that's part of the reason why I basically stayed for a PhD at Imperial College. And then, as you learn a bit more, you realize actually with like a background in machine learning and stats, you can do more exciting things than bet on football or soccer. So I ended up doing a postdoc. And then at the end of that, found myself at like within the Reality Labs team at Meta, which is where I am now.
Quite nice. So, in fact, historically, the way in which we do research has been changing, particularly in the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years. So, for you guys, I don't know if someone want to ask the questions. What trends are you observing in AI that may change the way research is done? It means what changes for students entering the field of AI today versus when you started in the field, I don't know, maybe we can start with you, Ricardo.
Yeah. So actually I started my PhD in a stats department. Statistics is very different to machine learning. Things move slowly. It's not uncommon, for example, for someone to finish a stats PhD with one paper. But that paper is like sort of like, let's say, the result of like 3 years of 4 years of like intense work, and they really like pursue that idea very, very deeply. Whereas I think like now in sort of machine learning and even some stats PhD programs, you see students graduating with sort of several papers where they've explored several ideas. And so on the one hand, I've noticed that like people sort of explore ideas at and you get a wider breadth. This is what I did in my PhD, actually. I don't think I explored one idea very deeply, but I touched upon a few ideas. And one criticism would be that, I didn't explore anything sufficiently deeply. That's one change I think that's come from this sort of like conference sort of like, how to say, out of like the sort of machine learning conferences.
Nice. And Maria, what about, for example, that because you did a PhD in machine learning and are particularly very close to health issues or health challenges. So for you, what was the most challenging thing, because you are in both sides, machine learning and medicine, or in the health sector?
Okay, so first, I'm not working on healthcare anymore, so I'm doing natural language processing in my current role in Meta. But yeah, I was working for healthcare for a little bit. And I agree, like healthcare is a particularly challenging application because the data either is scarce or it's very noisy or it's proprietary and so on and so forth. But I guess I wanted to follow up also on what Ricardo said, that essentially, yeah, things have changed, and in the sense that also the conference culture brings you to maybe move faster and maybe not go too deep into a topic. In my case, even though I did a PhD in machine learning, ironically, I spent half of my time in a statistics department because my supervisor moved. And so I kind of saw both sides, like the machine learning kind of conference-driven culture, and also the stats where you were more looking into publishing in journals. And then another thing I wanted to mention is that I think that when I started doing my PhD, machine learning was definitely more mathematical or statistical, whereas nowadays it's a little bit more engineering driven because of the rebirth of neural networks. So I think now, like being a very good software engineer or having a solid background in computer science is definitely very useful.
Of course, thank you very much. So Karen, because you are right now the responsible AI team, and you have also a quite interesting profile as a software engineer. For you, what challenges did you face at the beginning of your work at Meta?
I think that at the very beginning, I was afraid of reading papers because I didn't take that many math classes in college. And I know that a lot, at least the first few papers that I was reading, I did not understand any of the mathematical proofs. So I think that was probably the most intimidating thing at the very beginning. And also, I guess, not really knowing anything about responsible AI, having to start from scratch and having to build that background in order to understand like the issues and the research problems that are being studied right now. I think that was probably the hardest thing for me at the very beginning.
Okay, so I don't know for you, how will responsible AI and ethics redefine, so in that sense, current AI roles from your perspective, actually, for example, in the role you are right now facing?
How will responsible AI redefine research scientist roles, or?
Yeah, the artificial intelligence the role on your work, for example, everything on, maybe it could be on the software engineering side, on the research side, more on the current state-of-the-art artificial intelligence methods. But for you, for example, because you are more on the software engineering part, how it will define your role as a software engineer on a research team?
Yeah, I think that I guess responsible AI should be something that everyone should care about. There are I think some introductory papers about responsible AI for machine learning. And I think that, yeah, everyone should be, and anyone creating models and deploying them to users should have some background in responsible AI. I do think that there's also like a lot of social science people that are getting involved in or are collaborating with research scientists now, because even us as people, or as I guess experts in computer science, don't know all the problems that can arise with machine learning models. So yeah, I think that there's like a lot of collaboration happening with social science people, and I think that this is also like an open discussion that we like to collaborate with pretty much everyone. Yeah.
So a question more geared towards Maria and Ricardo. One of you is a research scientist while another is a research engineer. Can you talk about the nuances about each of the roles, and say if you're a graduate student wanting to aim for one of the roles, how should you optimize for that? What should you focus on? Is there a core between research scientists and research engineers that everyone should learn? And then how do you break out into a research engineer and then a research scientist? So either person, please.
Well, I can go first. So I think one very important thing is it's to focus on what you prefer rather than that saying that one is uniformly better than the other. So for example, if you like writing code, if you like open source libraries, and if you are interested in doing research, but not maybe necessarily first author publications, then the research engineer profile would be more suitable for you. Whereas if you are more interested in like first author papers and kind of being leading like research excellence, what we call research excellence, then you would maybe gear toward the research scientist. In my case, I was a research scientist in my previous job, and in my case, I think I enjoy being closer to the code and kind of working more collaboratively. So I think that's why I think research engineer it works well for me. But so in a way, I think both roles are similar, at least in Meta, but in Fair Labs, they are very similar, and you can kind of tailor them a little bit towards what you prefer, whereas you prefer doing research first author publications, or for example, being a library maintainer. That is totally fine, and you can find you can move between both roles. But yeah, I can let's see what Ricardo says.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that, like, very good research engineers are also like do great science, and very good research scientists like are very familiar with the code. So like there's like a spectrum, but like, I think there's a big overlap, right? The other thing I wanted to highlight, which I maybe didn't point out as clearly as before, is unlike Maria and Karen, I'm not in like a research organization. I'm in like, I guess you could say I'm in the team that's building the metaverse. Please don't ask me what the metaverse is. But like we're like trying to build a product. So our primary goal is not publishing papers, but like getting things to work. And in my team, the distinction is like a research scientist will prototype something, de-risk it, and show that it's like feasible. The research engineer makes sure that it like works on 99.9% of the population, and like the workflow is robust and can be run and all this kind of stuff. But again, like within my team, there's examples of research engineers that are driving like the quote science forward, and there's research scientists that are like very much in the details of the code and doing that.
All right, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. I think one question we're going to lead into is, we see that with Meta or Facebook back then, y'all had a lot of good academic collaboration, especially with Jan LeCun and NYU. So one other thing is, how at Meta, how is it possible if, say, like early researchers could try and connect in collaboration with research projects? Are there mechanisms to do that? Are there things that y'all are thinking about that? Because as you see, a lot of these companies have started wanting to join with academia, such as Jan LeCun with y'all, Jeff Hinton with Google. So what mechanisms could happen, such as, yeah, some people want to do academia, but also try to collaborate with Meta, because there are some things that you all are really good at, and having the duality of it could give you the best of both worlds.
So there are many different ways in which collaboration happens. So one is just essentially you can still keep your external collaborators and just write a paper together, as long as you have like the right, let's say, paperwork in place. That's completely fine. Then there are other things such as unrestricted gifts. So for example, there might be like every year there are like research proposal calls. So for example, in my previous team, there was a research proposal call about simulation frameworks. So then you would apply as an academic or as a small academic group, and then you would get some money, and then you would also be collaborating and working closely with a team. And then the third thing I can think of is the visiting researcher profile. So in that way, you are a temporary worker, and that kind of joins Meta for a contract for like, say, a year or 6 months. And then that gives you access to the system, and then that allows you to collaborate like more formally and more closer to like the people that are in Meta. Like, and in that case, for example, you can still be an academic in a university. So I think that those three are the three alternatives I can think of.
Do the other people also agree, or is there anything else y'all want to add in as well, just in case?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Maria said is spot on. The only other thing I would add is, the best way to start a collaboration, I mean, we're unfortunately not there in person, but talking to people, or just like cold emailing someone. And you mentioned Jan. Jan's great. Also, Jan is very busy and unlikely to reply. You might find that if you approach someone more junior, they're much more willing to sort of like interact with you.
Well, going to that cold email, would you have some suggestions saying that if you say like you read their papers and ask like very nuanced questions, that would probably be an easier scenario, as opposed to not reading the paper and just saying, hey, what is this paper about? That would probably be it would hedge your bets in a better scenario.
Yeah, if you can personalize it, that makes it all the better. Yeah.
Good, thank you. So to the audience, please be aware to do some due diligence and read a couple of their papers and give some nuanced questions to show that their papers have been read. I think for everyone who's written a paper, you want someone to read it and read it in depth. I think that's something that all of us would appreciate. All right, and this is a question for all of you. For for the work that you've done, what do you think is an essential skill that you think will lead to success in the roles that you've done? Is it, say, like a set of course foundational skills like non-convex optimization or set machine learning principles, or is it a growth mindset, or is it another attribute that maybe I'm not aware of? And for each person, may you define what you think that is? Because I think for all of us, we're all trying to figure out what is like the magical formula, but maybe it's very nuanced and it depends on a set of factors.
I can try to answer this. Yeah, so I think Maria mentioned that before, that like, being a strong software engineer is important. You mentioned like convex optimization. So I think, there's definitely like a base you should have. Good knowledge of optimization, strong software skills. Then when I see people in a professional capacity that really succeed, I think it's people that like, are able to set themselves up so they get like feedback quickly and they iterate on that. So like, if you're trying to solve MNIST or whatever, the quick feedback you get is you quickly see, you evaluate the model and you can iterate on that. And I find people that really succeed are able to do something similar in the professional context. So they're able to set themselves up in a way where they try things and they can immediately see if it's working or not. If it is, they're able to double down, and if not, they no longer invest time in that. And that can really help sort of improve impact and growth, I think.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Ricardo with respect to the like being open to like getting some feedback and actually absorbing it or accepting it, because I've seen if you're not open to that, like if you're not open to criticism or to the idea that like people make mistakes, and then like everyone makes mistakes, so it's fine if you make a mistake, but then you need to be able to self-correct and to quickly maybe pivot to a different idea. Maybe if it was not your idea initially, it's fine. Like it's kind of also being flexible and learning to work with people. I think that is I've seen people that are very successful because they have like really good soft skills. So even though, yes, the base, like the computer science base and the software engineering skills are very important, I think the soft skills sometimes are underestimated. So I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything. I know that I haven't started my PhD, but I know that some advice that people have given me is basically to be able to like work by myself. It's like pretty important during your PhD because a lot of advisors are pretty hands-off. So you're like the one in charge of kind of starting the project and ensuring that that you get what you want out of the project. Yeah, but I think that I'll learn more as I start my PhD, what skills are needed.
All right, awesome to hear. I think one thing is, again, for all three of you, what advice would you give current graduate students, either doing a master's or a PhD, that want to join industry, or say that want to do meta? What would be the advice that, say you could go back in time, imagine you can break causality, and give yourself the advice to help propel you and give you like an extra step? What would it be?
So I'm actually like very, very jealous of Karen's position, going into a PhD with obviously very strong software skills and already like some experience doing research here. I think if you can try several things before you decide, I think that's great. I remember during my PhD, some of the people that were most productive were people that had like spent some time in industry. In a few examples, it was because they did such awful jobs that then they were so happy to be doing something interesting. I hope that's not your experience, Karen. But yeah, I think it is worth trying several things. In my personal case, I did my undergraduate in maths, and I sort of like picked up software engineering or coding by myself without any formal knowledge, and that was always something that I sort of regretted. So I guess if I could go back, I would maybe sort of like build a stronger software engineering foundation.
Yeah, I agree with what Ricardo said about essentially, particularly about getting some industry experience. For example, during my PhD, I was not able to do an internship, and I think that is really good because then you can see how industry works and then you get some experience. Or like Karen, you can also do a residency before starting your PhD. And I just wanted to add that there's also, nowadays, it's easier to learn what's going on in AI, because even in like Latin America, there are many ways in which you can see what people are doing. For example, there's an artificial intelligence Latin American meeting that happens every year. And there's the other one, there's a reunion that is usually based in Mexico. So it's called the Artificial Intelligence and Applications Gathering. And it happened in Ecuador this year. So definitely, I think another way of like figuring out what you want to do is to just go to these events and ask people about their experience.
Yeah, I guess like for the AI residency role, I don't think you're expected to have any experience doing research, which I feel like you cannot say for like actual PhD programs. I feel like now they're super competitive. But yeah, I think that if you're interested in the AI residency program, it's open for anyone who's interested in doing that pivot to research.
Pertaining to all the layoffs and such, do you think AI is the most protected, I guess, class in the realm of all the different jobs and careers in the Meta network?
I guess I would prefer not to discuss that subject. And I don't think anyone is safe in this economy. Yeah, I don't think that statement makes sense.
So I just ask Karen. So later you moved from health. I noticed that from website that you moved from healthcare AI company to the Meta. So actually, I look very much like the healthcare AI company, but why you move out from that and into Meta? So I'm curious.
So I guess the reason why I moved to Meta at the beginning was because I've never worked for a big tech company before, and I was curious about how it was different from working at a startup. And then the second thing was that when I was doing healthcare, during my first 2 years in Meta, I was working in a different team that we were working on a simulation framework. So you could find parallelism between both, because essentially in healthcare, some people are interested in building digital twins, and these digital twins are used for like, how do you predict how your body and how you will react to, let's say, lifestyle changes in like a big period of time. And essentially, when I moved to Meta, I started working on like a simulation framework of the Blue app, Facebook. It was a similar thing. We wanted to predict user behaviors. So I see like lots of parallelisms in what I was doing during my first 2 years here. And then the second thing is like, I think in my case, it was great to be able to move from the healthcare setup, which was a little bit more like in academia, like when I was doing my postdoc, to a big company like Meta, because I was able to improve my software engineering skills and focus more on that side of like, building things at scale. So let's say that it was not let's say a straightforward choice. It was not something that I said I will leave healthcare, but then it was an opportunity. So it was a little bit fortuitous. I interviewed for a different team, and then I ended up working in the simulation framework team, and it was like a very good experience. So I think that's why I kind of ended up moving out of healthcare. It was not a very a very intentional choice. It just happened, like things change, and I was given a very good set of new opportunities.
So, guys, maybe I don't know if you can tell us about what is different at Meta. Why, if you want to give an advice to people that are doing a PhD or master's degree or even on the bachelor's degree, what's different in doing research at Meta? At Meta, one of of course the teams on the research structure. What do you think it's different, and why you love to do research at Meta?
I can try to answer this, although I with the caveat that I said I don't work in a research team. But I think what I've found is companies like Meta and DeepMind and Alphabet. My opinion is that they're really like professionalized or organized researchers, right? Like, it used to be the case that researchers would work in small teams, one advisor with a small number of students, and they would work very intensely and closely together. But by virtue of being in a slightly smaller team and perhaps with not so many resources or less resources, that their impact was somehow limited. And I think, we're doing research in these large organizations, Meta, DeepMind, Amazon, elsewhere, you're able to collaborate with a much larger number of people. So you get this critical mass of very motivated and skilled and intelligent people. And also you have access to great resources, right? Some of the models that are being trained at these institutions, you can't dream of training them elsewhere. So I think it's like, the resources you get and the critical mass of like-minded, motivated people.
Okay, I think I'll add in one question. I know that we all do a lot of research, and sometimes people may tie us to our jobs, like, hey, CJ, you're at Microsoft. It's not always the best thing to, your work doesn't define you, so this goes more non-technical. What's something that many people might not know, that something you enjoy that they may not know? Because, for me, I like to do kickboxing. I've done it for 3 years, but everyone just knows me from my research or the stuff that I did back in my PhD. So I want to know, what's something that y'all really enjoy that we wouldn't know, and we probably wouldn't fathom unless we ask you. So this is for all three of you.
Well, I really like going hiking and also doing yoga. I think those are my favorite things to do. And I mean, even though the UK is not very famous for big mountains, and they still has very nice national parks. And so, yeah, I think those are my two hobbies that I would pick for today.
I can go next. I have a lot of hobbies, which, I think it might be unusual for people in research, but yeah, I like going bouldering, playing tennis, running, biking. I have a dog, so I like spending time with him and taking him to dog play dates. And trying to replicate the sweet green salad. It's my ongoing project. It's it's like one of, I don't know if you guys know what it is, but it's like this salad chain, and they make very delicious salads. And I've been trying to replicate one of their salads for the past year.
Nice. Yeah. So like Karen, I also like tennis a lot. I just moved from the UK about a year ago, and I've sort of given up on tennis in New York because it's insanely priced and impossible to get a court. So I've taken up playing pickleball. I don't know if people know what pickleball is. It's like a version of tennis if you were 65 and have no mobility. So that's what I now do on my weekends. And there's many more courts. Yeah.
Hi. So along the lines of sharing your hobbies, we all struggle as data scientists, machine learning people interested in software with a work-life balance. Specific to Meta, how do the three of you have a strategy individually for pursuing those hobbies while performing at the level you guys are performing for the company?
I think that for me, I know that sometimes I feel bad for not doing as much work as I intended on any given day. So at least for me, I do like balancing my work, but that sometimes means that I have to work on the weekends. And for me, I feel like that's better than having all the work done on one day, but then not having the balance of hanging out with friends or going to a concert that I really want to. So yeah, for me, the way that I balance things is that sometimes I work on the weekends, and I honestly prefer that over just working really, really hard on the week, but then not having anything fun during the week.
So in my case, I try to schedule my either yoga lessons, or I also sometimes do CrossFit after work. So I have to, I have to be there at some point, and then I have to go. And if I don't go, it costs me money. Instead of going to the gym, because in the gym, sometimes you would skip a session or something, but whether if you have a class that you already paid for, then it's harder to not make it. So I think that has helped me. And also, as Karen said, try to make times to see friends and to generally keep the work-life balance, because this is what when they say it's not a marathon, it's a sprint. No, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So yeah, I think that is a very good point.
Yeah, I was also gonna say I've also followed Maria's tactic of like deliberately booking in something with a financial cost to like make me leave the office. Otherwise, you sort of like stuck there trying to figure something out. And then you come in the next day and you realize it was kind of obvious. I'm trying to get better at like all this kind of stuff of like knowing when to take a break. It's not so easy. So all these tricks that like force you to like forcing functions are pretty good. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you all for the wise advice, and thank you for spending your time here, giving us this awesome panel. We really do appreciate it. So if everyone can give a round of applause for them.